Hi guys, in this video we will be discussing the late Middle Ages. We are going to explain how the Crusades, the Black Death, the 100 Years' War, and the Great Schism contributed to the end of medieval Europe, and we will also identify the impact of political and legal ideas that are contained in the Magna Carta. By the time that we are finished, you will have compared and contrasted ideas contained in the Magna Carta to those that are in the Bill of Rights, and you will also analyze primary and secondary sources in order to determine the cause of the Black Death, and that will be done through an activity that we are going to do in class. So, the Magna Carta lesson is going to be another YouTube video that can be found on the website, or you can also type in this address here to take you to the video, or go to YouTube and search what is the Magna Carta and you'll find the video there as well. As you watch the video, complete the notes and use the information on the next 2 slides to complete the Venn diagram that's in your notes. As you're doing that, you will be identifying similarities and differences between the Magna Carta and the U.S. Bill of Rights. So this is the slide on the Magna Carta. These are some of the most important articles found in the Magna Carta, and I want you to look at these, read them over, and use them to fill out your Venn diagram. This is the second slide, which contains the 10 amendments that make up the Bill of Rights. So again, this is going to be used to complete the Venn diagram. So make sure you pause the video and go back between these 2 slides so that you can complete that assignment on the Magna Carta. Alright, so moving on to the rest of your notes, we're going to continue with talking about the Black Death. The Black Death was a plague that hit Europe between 1347 and 1351, and it was one of the most devastating natural disasters in history. It killed 1/3 of Europe's population, and the reason that so many people were prone to the infection was that they were malnourished due to the great famine that preceded the bubonic plague. There were changes in weather patterns in Europe that created a small ice age, and that resulted in food shortages and starvation. So the word famine is another word for food shortage and starvation. So again, people are too weak due to the fact that they don't have enough to eat, and so their bodies are unhealthy and unable to fight off infections. So the bubonic plague is also known as the Black Death, and when that plague comes to Europe, many of the people who were sick or already malnourished became sicker as a result. So during the time of the plague, people did not know what was causing it. We did find out later that it could have been carried by fleas that were on rats that had been hiding in the merchant ships that were coming from the east. But we didn't know that until way later. So at the time, people were trying to find explanations for this terrible disease. And one of the things that they did was accuse the Jewish population of poisoning wells and spreading the plague. This discrimination against Jews is known as anti-Semitism, and it was very common during the time to cast doubt or have hostility towards the Jewish community. There were all kinds of consequences to this loss of population. Some were good and some were bad. First of all, there was a decline in trade. Since a lot of people were dying off, trade is going to decrease, and that's going to slow the economy. Also, it's going to create a shortage of workers because the population is dying off. As a result, wages are going to increase because there's less people competing for jobs. There's also going to be less demand for food as the population is dying off, which is going to put an end to the famine and the food shortage. Around the same time, we begin to see that the power of the church is going to decline. It started when Pope Boniface VIII and King Philip IV of France had a face-off over the power of their kingdom. The bishop claimed that the king was not allowed to tax the clergy or the church officials, and the king tried to have the pope arrested for refusing to pay his taxes. The pope escaped but died soon after that. So Pope Clement V, who was French and a friend of the king, moved his palace to Avignon. and that is where the Pope lived from 1305 to 1377. A new Pope, Pope Gregory XI, moved back to Rome and died soon after moving. The cardinals who were charged with electing a new pope elected a new pope who was Italian, and they were supported by England and England's allies. The French cardinals did not agree with that election and declared the election invalid. They elected their own French pope and moved him to Avignon, and this pope was supported by France and France's allies. So for a time there were two popes in power, and no one really knew who the legitimate pope was because they both claimed legitimacy. An attempt at a resolution in 1409 resulted in the appointment of a third pope. So for a time there were even three popes in power. Eventually in 1417 a new pope was elected who everyone agreed on, but by this time people had begun to lose faith in the papacy. They felt that they weren't acting in a Christian manner, and that the church was exerting too much political power, and so they begin to lose the trust of the people. Another thing that brings an end to medieval Europe is the 100 Years' War. In this war, England and France are fighting over the Duchy of Gascony, a piece of land. And the English started to use peasants as foot soldiers to fight against the French knights. And they were actually quite effective in the first battles. A woman named Joan of Arc, she was a French peasant girl who was 17 years old, claimed that she heard voices from saints commanding her to help France in their battle against England. And she helped lead a lot of battles for the French army, and they even seized Orleans as a result of her leadership. She was captured in battle and she was executed for witchcraft, but she was a national hero for the French people. The French win in 1453, partly due to the success of the cannon, which was invented around that time. Alright, so after the 100 Years' War, King Louis XI is going to build a very strong kingdom in France. He imposes a permanent tax called a taille, which all peasants need to pay, all of the people in the lower class. So that is going to bring a lot of money to the French king. In England, you're going to see that Henry VII will create a strong government as well. He is going to eliminate private armies and raise a national army, and he is also going to reduce taxes so that people feel that taxation is fair. In Spain, we'll see that Isabella and Ferdinand, when they marry, are going to control two separate kingdoms. They are both strict Catholics, and they are going to force Jews and Muslims to convert to Catholicism or leave Spain if they don't convert. And we'll visit them again when we get to the Reformation and the Reconquista. Alright, and that brings us to the end of the lecture. If you have any questions, make sure you write them down and get to me when you get to class. And again, don't forget to watch the video on the Magna Carta, as the Magna Carta is also one of the reasons why the feudalism ended in Europe. Thanks for watching.